Hello, I'm Anthony Wilson, the founding executive director of Equity in Education, and I'm sitting here with
Eshé Collins, honored to serve as chair of the Atlanta Board of Education and represent District 6 on the board as well.
Well, I'm super excited to sit down with you, Eshé, to have a brief conversation about everything that you're envisioning for the district and how we as a community can come in to wrap around our kids.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really excited about the dialogue. It's a necessary one, so thank you for inviting me.
Well, first off, I want to find out a little bit more about you.
Oh.
Tell us a little bit of your story.
I know.
And then why you chose to run and serve since 2014, serving kids across Atlanta.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I start with telling everybody I'm a true AT alien. I know we're unicorns. I was born and raised in Atlanta. I grew up in East Atlanta. My mother was a single mom of, it's 6 of us. And so just like any mom, just wanting her kids to have a great education, have access to, great community, and just have opportunity. And so much so she sent us to live with my grandmother in DeKalb County, which was neighboring. So I grew up in East Atlanta at the corner of Glenwood and 2nd Avenue. Right down the street was East Lake Meadows. And for those who are Atlanta historians know about like East Lake Meadows, Bourne Homes, Grady Homes, and just the communities at that time. And so my mother sent us to live with my grandmother in the neighboring county, in DeKalb County, where I actually matriculated through elementary and high school. So I went to like Kell Lake Elementary, Kittredge Gifted School, and then I went to Druid Hills High School. On the weekends, though, my life was different. I would come home and come back to East Atlanta, and my friends I grew up with, it was just different. What I was exposed to was drastically different from what they were experiencing. And so over the years, for me, I know for a fact that was the catalyst for where I am today. Did I imagine back then being in this seat? No, but what I did know was that the opportunities that I was being afforded, just being able to be in different communities, having access to different opportunities in school, just having different access to opportunities just to grow was vastly different from the community that I literally grew up in. So, for me, I stayed in Atlanta, went to Spelman College, majored in sciences. I thought I was going to be a doctor, but my heart took me to the community. So I was a Bonner Scholar where I got more involved in our schools. And so I was volunteering at that time at Dean Rusk Elementary.
Okay.
The building is still there, but it's now an instructional center. And so I, from there, saw the same repeat of my life, children that was amazing kids, had, needed opportunity, but the communities that they were around just didn't foster it. And so that was the catalyst for me choosing to not pursue a career in medicine and to actually go into education. And so I became a teacher. And so then I would graduate from Spelman. I became a Teach for America Corps member and actually taught 4th and 5th grade at A.D. Williams Elementary in Bourne Homes, right down the street from where we are. And here again, here I am about 10 years removed from my own experience and seeing the same thing. And at this time, I'm seeing mothers and families in Bourne Homes struggle and make the same tough choices like my mother. But now I'm a teacher in the classroom. And so I have a little bit more influence to make change, but I still felt voiceless. I felt that I knew what my kids needed. I knew what the community was yearning for, but we didn't have a voice at the table. And so that truly for me was a catalyst for me to consider a career in ed policy and advocacy. And that's when I left the classroom and pursued my law degree, became an attorney and worked in this space, and came back to Atlanta, where I knew then sitting on the school board was going to be the kickstart of me being able to make the transformative change for our children and for our city that I know we needed.
So you experienced it when you were younger in equities. Then you became a Spelmanite, and you volunteered in spaces where that was so true. And then you became a teacher, and you're still seeing it. So what do you see was the disconnect? Well, what was continuing to happen? that you saw very prevalent in your city?
The generational gaps and the generational marginalization that we hear about. For me to live that life story, to see it play out in another generation, to see it play out in another generation, to see it play out literally 4 generations removed, it was very troubling for me. But it was also the igniter, I would say, like the fire that needed to be lit inside me to really hit the ground and fight for change. And so it was the trajectory of it. That for me was the personalization of what people say, what is systemic, like systemic issues, systemic marginalization, systemic poverty, systemic every issue, lack of opportunity that you can think of. And so that for me was just that connection alone. I knew that that's my life story, and I know this is my life's work.
So you saw it happen over and over again, but you said it's not going to continue to happen. So you decided to run for school board.
Absolutely.
You said, I'm going to do more to make sure that no kid is going to continue to experience that. What made you run?
What made me run was just that. So the next level of this generational piece I tell you about, and I stack on it. I bought my home in Southwest Atlanta. And I live off of Fairburn and Campbellton Road, and in the Thera cluster. And we'll also
say a little about the history of
Southwest Atlanta. I mean, let's start with the most prolific great leaders came out of Southwest Atlanta. Since Maynard Jackson, every mayor has came out of Southwest Atlanta. Alonzo Krim, the first Black superintendent that, desegregated Atlanta Public Schools, raised his family in, Southwest Atlanta. Hank Aaron lives in Southwest Atlanta. So I want to start with the prestige of what Southwest Atlanta is. But then also you have this tale of 2 areas. You have the affluent, side of Southwest Atlanta, and then you have that side of Southwest Atlanta that's struggling, and still struggled. And so now I own my home in the area, and the same stories, just circled around lack of opportunity, our children having high quality education, the connection of once they leave the schools and what the opportunities are afforded to them. The additional part to that was, and it's something that we're working really hard to make sure never happens again, that was the height of the cheating scandal as well. And so a large part of the schools on the south side of the city was heavily impacted by that. And so there was a need and a cry of wanting leadership to really dive in and help rebuild Atlanta Public Schools to the prestige and prestige and high recognition and high achievement district that it has been and produced. When you think about Martin Luther King Jr., when you think about great leaders that have come out of Atlanta Public Schools, that was the cry out from the community. And then that was the point I knew it was my time. But I also knew I was ready. And so when I sat with that decision and made that decision, it was an easy one for me because I've had this trajectory of experience at various levels and also preparing for this work. And that was the catalyst for me to actually step out and run for office.
So you were ready. The courage piece, though.
When people told me I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, people told me, I was too young.
Talk about it.
People told me that I was too young. People told me that, the biggest part, I think, and that was the most hurtful part, was that I was too young. And so at some point, I was too educated. And I said, well, what does that mean? What do you want someone? What do you want someone that is educated enough or more to make decisions for children, that we're looking at a space and having a conversation of lack of high quality education, lack of experiences and exposure and opportunities. So dealing with those two things, it was hurtful to hear, but it was also the catalyst of why I hear you, but this is why I decided to run, and you just confirmed for me why I need to run, why I need to be in this seat.
Tell me your vision as board chair.
My vision absolutely is, and I start with just one word, equity. Not, I just start with equity. And when people say, what does that mean? I said, it is truly about us not only having the conversation, but aligning our actions to make sure that everything that we do is equitable, whether in supporting our schools, family engagement, opportunities, those experiences that our children need once they leave the schoolhouse or once they graduate, all those equitable opportunities. And I take a step back and explain it in the way of people to understand that when I mean equity, the investment looks different. Like I need people to sit with that.
I want to double click on that.
Yeah, so with equity, so you hear this conversation about equality versus equity. And equality, the root word is equal. So everyone gets the same, everyone is equal on the same playing field. Well, we know that doesn't exist for us. That's not reality. Equity for me is ensuring that everyone, yes, has equal playing field, but the investment to get everyone there looks different.
Yes.
So if we're in communities where they have a history of divestment or food deserts or a lack of opportunities, lack of great schools, lack of, extracurricular, then the investment there's going to be a need for more investment there than a community where they've had that and they've always had that and what they built on that and they've built something great as a result of that. And so I start with that when I think about my vision because it touches everything that we do.
Yes.
It touches the school, every grade level that we have. It touches every teacher. It touches every school. It touches every community partner. It touches every neighborhood. It touches our entire city. And so for me, my vision is for every student to graduate from Atlanta Public Schools with that high quality education. But let me stop with the excellence in their experience to where they choose that. I may not want to go to college right now. That's okay, but at least we've prepared you for a career path to consider, or you have the life skills that you need when you go out here to be prepared for a world that is going to respond differently to the diversity of our students.
It's a fight. Our organization, as you know, Equity in Education, and one of the things that folks have.
There we go. Yeah, right.
What I experience most is folks having a visceral reaction to the word equity. What does that mean for me? Does that mean I get less things because other communities need more? So how would you explain that to our broader community of it's a sacrifice that we have to make to and to ensure that our kids, our 52,000 kids in this city who are in our schools experience excellent education? How do we talk to our neighbors about that?
And I think that's the frustrating thing about it. I think it's become such a coined word in education now that you get that response. And just like, those coined phrases that you hear every year.
Buzzwords.
Yeah, the buzzwords, right? But I always start with the fact of pushing equity doesn't mean you get less. You get less of something. And so I try to dispel that already negative, reducing mindset of saying, no, it's not taken away from anyone. It's making sure that the investments are there so everyone have an equal chance at a fair playing field. And that looks different. So then once you explain the fact that, say, for Douglas High School, we may have to invest more in certain areas to bring Douglas to a school of excellence like some of our other high schools in the district. And that actually, and when I think about like the investment in Douglas, it may not just be the high school. It truly may be the full cluster.
Absolutely.
The investment at the middle school, the investment at the elementary school. So we build the elementary school up, you build your middle school,
Absolutely.
You build your middle school up, you build your high school. And so I think that's where the conversations need to go more. And also people making time to understand what that means. So the first reaction isn't, you're taking away from me, or you're reducing what I have or what I need to serve someone else. I think that's often the easy response because we've been in that space, historically, when you think about any issue, economic systems, race, racist systems, anything, is always that us versus them or that negative versus positive. And so I think that's where we need to start.
But when we're looking at our data and what's, we coming out of a pandemic where you and your colleagues led through that alongside the superintendent. But when we're thinking about what's happening in our schools, right? Talk to me a little bit about not so much the data, because data, people can go and read it, right? But what are we doing, innovative programs and solutions that we're doing to really increase literacy? Because we know that for Black kids, Black children in particular, literacy is how we overcome poverty. We know in the city of Atlanta, only 4.5% of folks who are born in poverty are going to exit. And for me, literacy was how I got out of the hood. Yeah. Right? I knew how to read. I knew how to get places. So talk to me a little bit about what's going on in our schools, some innovative solutions that you all are thinking about to increase literacy across the board.
Yeah, I mean, of course, a pandemic created a landscape where everyone learned in multiple ways, right? So you think about a pandemic where schools are shut down, everybody is home. The parent is now the teacher, right? And the teacher is more so in the supporter role because virtual and remote learning is now new. So I think the pandemic created this landscape for us, the opportunity to think about what innovation is and some of the different things that we thought about trying, but never even stepped into trying. And so I think I would say on the literacy front, it also, to start and looked at the way of how our children are actually learning to read, how they're responding to curriculum, reading strategies, support. What is the extension of wraparound services in that space? And so, of course, as you can imagine, we made more investments in our social emotional learning spaces and our, wraparound spaces, because we also want our kids to be in a good space mentally, physically, and socially, so that they feel free and clear to learn. We knew that the regular school day was not going to be, could not be just the end all be all. And so we did our summer learning academies. We did extended day. We built in additional, intervention periods. And let me not talk in the past tense, because we're still doing those things now. And so, so we looked at all of these strategies that we weren't doing before, because we were taking more of a traditional approach to reading and learning period, and really start looking at different ways of incorporating all of those things in a child's learning experience. And so then you think about, well, when they leave the school, what does that look like? Redefine what family engagement looks like, and bringing our families along, creating screeners. So you talk about data. Data always talk about either milestones or in a course. So we brought in a universal screener, which we give children multiple times out the year, that help them also track their progress. And so what you end up not having is, where children are in the beginning, and then you see where they are in the end, but there was no monitoring that took place during the school year. Now, that I know there could be some criticism around that about, like over assessment or over testing children. But what I think the conversation need to revolve around is, how are we using that to inform kids and their families?
Absolutely.
We take a test and you get the data and you create a report. It's just that.
It's just that.
But if you're not taking that information, showing it, going through with a kid and, child on certain things, like strategies, or even adjusting their learning to, based on what you're seeing, and more importantly, educating parents on what they can do outside of the school context. That's what we're doing more of. And so it's our goal, and we're starting to see an increase in our closing the gap a little bit in our, reading and numeracy, and some of, the board goals and guardrails that we set. Starting to see a little bit of that. I'm excited to see what we'll end this year, since this will be the first full year of us looking at that.
We're excited too about that.
But I think those are the innovative things that's happening. Removing this cookie cutter approach.
Yes.
What's happening in one school may not work for another.
It will not, because it won't happen for kids.
Empowering our school leaders and their team and the teachers to make those, giving more autonomy to make those decisions, because they know their children, and getting out the way, that's taken time over the years to develop, and that's taken time over the years to really push more autonomy at the school level. But I firmly believe they know our children. They work with our kids every single day. They work with our families every single day. Give them what they need so they can do what they need to do and get out the way.
You talked about families a lot and community a lot. We're sitting in Paul Kids in Bankhead.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we know that there are a lot of our folks, our families and our community members are seeing what's happened. They know the historic context of our schools and they want to get involved, but they find that there's a barrier maybe between them and the school. How can folks get involved? I mean, Paul Kids is doing incredible work. There's so many different organizations across the city of Atlanta doing incredible work. We're talking about wrapping around our kids in our community. How do we kind of lower the wall or the barrier between communities and schools so that folks who want to support can?
Yeah, I think it starts with having collective conversations, bringing everyone to the table, which that sounds really easy, right? And simple. That's a simple answer, but you'll be surprised it doesn't happen enough. And so when you talk about like this wall, or this wall that's built, or people not feeling comfortable coming to the school, and vice versa. It is one about just having the collective dialogue. What it'll all take for us to support our kids, and what our role in our roles. How can we do that? And I know people. I say this because it happens a lot. For a long time, the schools, and still to this day, the schools carry so much of the community space. And I push back a lot. I push back on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because our teachers come into the classroom to educate children. Our principals, lead the schools. But what has happened over time, because there's always been this breakdown of conversations, or everyone hasn't been at the table, or those services just didn't exist at one point of time, the schools had taken on so much of the burden. And it's unfair, when kids are dismissed and they leave out. I do push back on this dialogue that the school needs to be responsible for what happens after kids leave school. Because what that does, that triggers a conversation of, well, what are the community supports and organizations or city support that exists to help our children once they leave school? For a while, we didn't have, I would say, sitting on the board, we didn't have that relationship. We have it now, and it's a great one to sit in because it's easy. It's like a breath of fresh air. You're like, see, this is what we're talking about. We can have dialogue with city council and our city government on programming that's available for our children once they leave, the schoolhouse, whether it's during the week or over the summer or on the weekends. We have more deeper conversations about how we support our families in that space. So there's workforce development programs, or there's other things that support our parents, where they would come to the school. And at one point in time, schools were doing the GED programs and everything. Now we have a relationship with organizations to push, to push parents or the community to those services. And so it's more of collective action that is happening, which is great. And so
let's talk about that. Let's talk about collective action. So we sit in Atlanta, a booming city, 12th largest economy in the country. It's an incredible city to be here. But when we talk about our kids, how can we get more of you talk about the relationship between the school board and the city council. I've seen it happen. I'm watching it unfold. It was beautiful. I'm watching the superintendent and the mayor develop strong bonds, and I'm seeing there's some planning and some vision setting. And when we're thinking about families, communities, how do we share the responsibility of supporting our schools? And either in policy for the city or even with community, business, we're talking about funding community, we're talking about all the Coca-Colas, the Home Depots, they're doing so much already, but how do we streamline it, right? It feels like maybe a lot of people are doing work, but how do we organize the work that we're doing to wrap around our
absolutely.
kids?
The collective conversation, having everyone at the table and everyone understanding how they play their part in the overall solution. And so when you think about, like, what I was just sharing with you, we think about city government and city services. What are those programs and services that are available to our children and their families? Again, like I said, either, once they leave the schoolhouse, and what is the trajectory and the continuation of those programs, right? What we have for our, babies, our elementary kids, what's available for our middle schools and middle schoolers, and then of course our high school students. When I think about companies like Coca-Cola and our private community, their role in regards to the investment, and I would say playing their role in that. And so whether it is financial, whether it is their corporate responsibility piece, huge volunteer base, coming to APS and saying, this is what we have, how can we help you? Versus at one point in time, it was, this is what we have, and this is how we're going to help you. And so there was a breakdown there, because a lot of the time it was either duplicative, or it just didn't align with where we are. So it's more of those conversations of, this is what I have, how can I help? How can I help APS in what you need, or moving your strategy forward or your vision forward, versus this is what I have and this is how I'm going to help you with it,
And what's the role of the board to take those resources and then make sure that they're equitably distributed, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's a lot of potential for that to happen.
Yeah.
For the board to be that, which brings about equity for kids in the district.
Yeah, I think it's important first for everyone to understand the difference between the role of the board and the superintendent. Yep. And so the role of the board, we are the governing entity of the district. So we set the vision, mission, approve the budget, look at those things, evaluate the superintendent, be a part of the community communication and liaison with the community in that space. And then the day-to-day, how it gets done is the administration, the superintendent. And so we think about the why and what do we want to see. The superintendent this is how we're going to make it, get that done. And so thinking to your question as far as what is the board role in all of this, is to be vocal about, this is the vision that we have. And so we know we want to prepare all of our children for college, career, and life. And we're like, okay, so what does that look like for us? When it comes to college, we want our kids to be prepared if they do decide to go to college right after high school, being fully prepared with curricular, like I said, extracurricular, those, foreign language opportunities, those things. Career, what does that look like? Okay, we want to make sure our students are prepared. What are the career pathways? What are the partnerships with city, with workforce development? What are some of those opportunities? And then life are the life skills, right? Social emotional learning, wraparound services, the altruistic part of development that we want to see in students. So that's our vision. And then we have our one employee, the superintendent, and we're like, this is our vision. This is what we want to see. How can you make this happen? And so the superintendent makes it happen, and we get out the way. And so what happens over the year, we monitor, we monitor what we see. And so we know that if we know there are certain practices or things that are happening in our schools that are not working, we go to the superintendent about as far as understanding why this is not working, because it doesn't align with the vision and the mission and the the strategy that we put in place. So I think it's important for people to understand that, because oftentimes we get calls where people want board members to immediately jump in and fix it. We have to be very mindful and understand what our role is, because we are not we're not micromanagers. Our jobs is not to go in and actually do the day-to-day. That's what we employ the superintendent for. But our mission and vision is how we make all of this happen. If we know equity is a big piece for us, and we know part of equity is ensuring that funding is available to support these initiatives, and we know we are charged with approving a budget, well, we want to see a budget that reflects the equitable standards and stance that we have been vocal about, and charge the superintendent and her team to make that happen for us.
A lot of people like myself, people, in our community, we're thinking about how do we support what you all are doing, right? It's difficult to be bold, right, sometimes, and have courage to bring down equity. You said it's going to be a fight to get to equity. And oftentimes when those decisions are made, school board members like yourself need support from community to come and say, yeah, you're doing the right thing. It's a hard thing that you're doing. And we're behind you 100%. So how could the community wrap around, if you will, to borrow that term, around folks who are doing really critical but bold work?
Yeah, I would say from the board piece, what I would encourage the community to do is become more vocal, right? So we don't hear often the great work. It's like the bad restaurant experience. Okay. I always said it that way, right? We have a great time at a restaurant. You just have a great time. But the minute you have that bad experience, you on a Yelp, we're on a Google review or something to that nature. And so I often encourage the community, if we're doing something right, let us know, you know, like truly be vocal, use your voice and let us know as your board so that we know that that's something that we want to continue or either scale up or really look at, like, how is this working? And some communities are very vocal, but there are some that are not. And I'm continuously pushing my South Side and West Side folks to become more vocal in that space. The other part I think of engagement is to get involved, to learn, to really learn more. It's a lot. And you know, if you're at home trying to Google and learn what all the things that we're doing, it can be it can be daunting. It's a lot of information. It could you know, I would say it can be complicated as well.
Overwhelming. Absolutely.
Overwhelming. Perfect word. Overwhelming. So I also encourage community, when we have town halls, when we're at meetings, when you see things are posted, just carve out once a quarter to attend a school function or a school event or a cluster night or something. There's always something happening literally every day, almost every week, if not every week in the schools, just to become more, you know, to come out and educate yourself more. But then I know what that's going to open up as far as you see what's happening in the schools. And that, for me, I hope becomes the catalyst of our community really getting involved and giving back to the schools, whether you have children in whether you have children in the district or not. And so those are the engagement piece. And then I always tell everyone, board members, we're on a staggered election cycle now. So every 2 years will be a school board election. Exercise, and I mean just elections period, exercise your right to vote and make sure you have the representative that you want representing your community and your, you know, and your schools. And you want a school board that's very engaged, very active and very knowledgeable of what's happening so that we can communicate that to the community.
You talked a little bit about what school board does, but people don't understand how much power the school board has. And I mean, kids our greatest natural resource, but just in terms of like political power, in terms of the power to move things, just say a little bit about just like, people don't understand going down ballot and going like, school board is my jam. I don't want to be anywhere else besides in this space.
Me too, right? I didn't think of anything else when I decided to run but school board. But you have I appreciate that question, because people often underestimate the power of your school board. The Atlanta Board of Education in itself is one of the most powerful entities, not only in the city, but in the state.
100%.
Our charter, we are an independent school system. So we're not tied to the city. So our superintendent is not appointed like a chancellor or appointed by a city, you know, city official or county or anything like that. We're an independent school system that was given a power to tax. We set the direction. We are we are an independent board. And so with that, if you think about about 51% of your property taxes fund schools, go to schools.
How many?
51%.
51%.
51%. So when you look at your tax bill,
that's the majority of your money.
Absolutely. The largest line item you're going to see on your tax bill is it'll say Atlanta school bonds, right? That is the largest amount of your property tax. So the school system retains 51% of the property tax base that funds our schools. Think about it when you think about like you're a shareholder in a company. We are the majority shareholder. And so that's why we are the school system are attached to helping fund the Beltline, helping fund tax allocation districts, helping fund other initiatives and development pieces throughout the city, because those public dollars 51% of those public dollars go to the school system. With that being said, you want your board that oversees that, like a board of directors for a corporation. Atlanta Public Schools is $1 billion, is a 1.4 billion dollar company. And so you think about your board as a board of directors. You want them to be knowledgeable. You want them to make sure they're making the right investments of your dollars, which is for us, it's into our children. And you want to make sure that we're exercising the level of governance and management and make sure that we are achieving the goals and the mission, and we're being right and fruitful with the investment that we're making, which is our, with our funds and in our kids. And so I often share that with people and thinking about, like, we're just not like you're a school board. We are extremely powerful. We're fun, we're tied to a lot of things that is happening through the city and investment wise. But also the independency of us give us the opportunity to do a lot of things differently that a lot of other school systems don't have the luxury of doing.
So it's almost like you do need someone who is too educated to be on the school board.
Yeah, I was trying to tell them
a degree or two or three.
Absolutely. No, you definitely want that because I think, my metaphor is the easiest way of laying it out. It's $1 billion corporation. Our community are our shareholders. Our children are the investments and the products that we want to see. And so you want your board or your board of directors to be very knowledgeable of investing your dollars wisely in our, the products that we want to see, which is our children.
2025. It's the year 2025, and we are closing out on the school year, and we're looking at data.
Okay.
We're looking at where our kids are. We're looking at where our community is. We're looking at wraparound services. We're looking at the city. What does it look like?
Utopia. Everybody knows seriously. 2025, which will be the end of my term, will I hope to see we serve as a national and global model for this is how you do this right. The city, the school system, our, private sector, public, everyone is aligned and what needs to happen for all children in Atlanta and understands that it looks different because the lives and our history is different. In the historical perspective is different. And so my goal is, while we celebrate even today with our graduation rate for the first time in history being on average with the state now, like we're on average with the state, I think about 2025 and not only that continuing progress, but our students coming, our former students coming back as leaders and our former students having the pride of saying APS, APS made me into the person that I am. And I think that is a combination of, again, like I said, our children graduating prepared, our families feeling more connected with the school, connected with the schools and the school district, and all of our entire community has truly wrapped their arms around the school system. And every year since I've been on the board, I feel that hug getting tighter, tighter, and tighter. And I love what I'm seeing. So 2025 for me, it's my hope that my legacy will be leaving in that space.
What would you say to kids? From kindergarten or pre-K, our ECE, our little snotty ones, to the ones who are about to matriculate out, and then to our alumni and to our students who didn't get a chance to finish. What do you say to them? That is my final. That is my final one. But I would love to know what you would.
We love you. We love you. We want the best for you. And we want to help you get to wherever you want to go. Let us know what you need. And I tear up a little bit. Let us know what you need. Let us know what your family need, because it will be you that will be taking care, that will be taking care of us. But I always start, with, we love you. And that's what I would. That's what it feels. That's what community feels like, love. Absolutely, as it should. And the tighter the hug, the deeper the love. Absolutely. And I think from there, our kids get a sense of the love that we have for them. We want the best for them. but also I want them to feel empowered to voice what that look like. And even our little ones, let's be clear, our babies will tell you what they need. Our 4-year-olds, they will tell you, ask them, they will tell you what they need. And so I always start that with all of our kids is, what do you need from me to help you be better?
And so you're committed to that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Which is why when I share with you my vision, is that one word, equity, because every child's response is different. It truly is. And yes, I'll start with we love you.